Welcome to Sold with Webinars, a podcast that aims to uncover how the most successful experts, coaches, consultants, and e-course professionals sell their products and services with just one sales presentation or webinar. A simple sales webinar can transform the business and life of a solopreneur. And this podcast will show you how other experts just like you are generating 6 and 7 figures per year online with their webinars. So let's get started. Hey there, Joel Irway here, and thanks so much for tuning in today. I'm really excited about our guest on today's show, Greg Hickman, because what we talked about on the show today was all about the funnel and the automation and what does your actual marketing funnel and your sales funnel look like with a webinar if you're selling your courses, if you're selling your products, and if you're selling your services. Now, Greg has been building these funnels for some of the biggest names in the digital marketing industry. So I knew when I reached out to him, he would be able to share a lot of great insight on what the actual funnel looks like. And most importantly, if you're just starting out, what you need to consider first as the first part of your webinar funnel before you build out all the different complicated parts. And so you're going to really enjoy this interview today. And so I want you to really focus on what you need to get started when you consider building your webinar funnel. And so let's jump right into today's interview and get to the meat of the content so you can learn how to start building your webinar funnel today. Greg and I have been connected for the past few months now, and we've done some work together, and we've been doing some collaboration. And so I knew that I wanted to have him on the podcast because he's got a completely different specialty than what I have, and our skills complement each other so well that I just want him to completely brain dump and share with you guys what he knows and what his specialty is, and I know that his value will provide tremendous benefits to you that are listening. So Greg, man, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Cool. So why don't we, Greg, why don't you give everybody just a quick 2-minute intro about what you do, where you came from, and we'll start from there.
Yeah. So Greg Hickman, I started this company called System.lyout, kind of out of desperation, actually, a couple of years ago. And really, we've been behind the scenes building out, like you said, marketing funnels for some of the top online entrepreneurs that are out there. Most of our clients are selling courses and or some form of membership combination of those two. With some coaching, consulting here and there. But pretty much every one of our clients has achieved mastery in some level, some area of expertise, whether that be Facebook ads or health, wellness, all different categories of experts that have then taken that expertise and put it into an online training program. And at that point, they need to go out and market that. And, we've had the ability and really the opportunity to build out a wide variety of funnels. A lot of webinars, obviously, as you know, webinars are hot, but live webinars, evergreen webinars, weekly webinars, video series, connecting all those dots, to really what it ends up being is like that complete customer journey that is automated. And there's a lot of systems, obviously, that are, talking to each other to make a lot of these things happen. But, we've seen a lot of what works and a lot of what doesn't. And I know that we'll be talking about that today.
Awesome. Cool, dude. So what I want to start with is when people consider webinars, a lot of people immediately want to go towards automated webinars. And I know that people can have success with automated webinars, but if somebody were to approach you, Greg, and Systemly and say, hey, Greg, I've got this awesome course that I want to sell, and I've got my webinar complete, and I want to go, how can I blow this up, right? I want to go to $100,000 a month and automate my process. Like, what's the first thing that you're going to be asking them? What are you going to be looking at to see, should we go automated first, or what should be the first steps?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it ranges based on the type of person, but if they've been doing webinars, a lot of times, a lot of people that come to us, they've already been doing webinars live, whether they're doing one live one a month or they are doing a weekly live webinar. So, I mean, we're looking to see if they have experience doing webinars first. And more importantly than that, have they been selling from that webinar successfully? Because if it's not converting or they've never done it before, as like taking the webinar and spending the time to do the recording when you're not even sure if it's working yet, like there's more time involved iterating on that than there is iterating on a live webinar. So, iteration is obviously, paramount when it comes to finding how to best convert on a webinar, especially if you have a new offer or you're testing a new offer. So, if they're new to webinars, we always recommend go live. If they're creating something new, we always start live to validate that they can close on a webinar. But if they come to us and they've been doing it, they've shown and demonstrated that they can close from a webinar, and their real frustration is scale and the headache of just having to show up live. First of all, God forbid, thankfully we live in a world where like people can do hundreds of thousands of dollars a month by spending like one live webinar a week, like 90 minutes to 2 hours, which is crazy that like we complain about that. But, the fulfillment of a lot of these things that people are selling, takes up a lot of time, and the marketing and building the audience, takes a lot of time. So at some point, you want to automate that. And when we've worked with folks that, whether they've come from, they've been doing the live weekly thing and they're just exhausted, and they want to, the reason that they want to go automated is they know that that's the best way to really scale beyond what they're doing. And, the webinar has truly become like the highest leverage point in no matter what funnel you're creating, at least in today's world. I think like live video is going to kind of rival that in some way, shape, or form. But the ability to create a recurring event that is on demand, that people can watch and buy from at any time on their own schedule, really allows you to penetrate all these different types of audiences and get people to know, like, and trust you faster than ever before, and sell products that 1,000, 2,000, and sometimes even higher, when done correctly, essentially on autopilot. So, so if you're new, you're validating, just getting into webinars for the first time, go live. But obviously you're doing all of that with the intention to get that evergreen.
Awesome, man. So I want to dive a little bit deeper for the audience who this may be their first experience with a webinar, right? We talk about automating, and there's when you build an automated webinar funnel, there's more than just the presentation that we're automating. So I want to start with, what does a simple automated webinar funnel look like? And then we'll talk about that for a little bit. And then I want you to kind of expand and say, hey, listen, like once that starts converting, we'll take the next step and kind of blow it out. So let's talk about a simple automated webinar funnel from start to scratch. What does that really look like?
Absolutely. And I love that you're kind of focused on the simple first, right? One of our beliefs at System.ly is start simple, get ninja later. And really when it comes to implementing, I think any funnel, regardless of if it's a webinar or whatever, any sort of automation, you always implement like what we will consider as the minimum viable funnel first. And I think a lot of people, when they hear how complex and the segmentation-ness, all of that stuff, it can get tricky, but most of that stuff delays it ever getting live in the first place. So if you are listening and you're in that stage of, I'm new to webinars, or I'm just validating this new offer, I really recommend that you focus on the simplistic version. And really at its simplest, really is someone registers, they get a confirmation email, and the confirmation email gives them all the information on where to show up, calendar invite, get on their calendar, and that's it. Like one email. Now, I would recommend you want to do a little bit more than that, but like if writing 3 or 4 more emails is what's going to stop you from getting your webinar live, get the one done, right? Get that one reminder email as to when they need to be there. If you can spend a little bit more time, we see a confirmation email. We see a 24 hours in advance, the morning of, and then an hour before, and then usually a text message 15 minutes before. And these don't need to be complicated emails either. This could just again, version 1. Hey, don't forget, webinar starting at this time. Here's a link to join. We're going to be covering XYZ. Like it could be like 5 sentences, right? Doesn't need to be, super psychology or anything like that. Just tell people where to be, what you're going to talk about, why they should show up. Then obviously you have the event, the event itself. You've probably talked about the power of the presentation. We're not going to go into that necessarily, but on that webinar, you're going to be making some sort of an offer. And there's going to be people that have registered and attend and that buy, hopefully. And then there's going to be people that register, attend, and don't buy. And then there's going to be people register and just don't attend at all. Now, you can go all sophisticated and segment all that stuff. We recommend you don't. In version 1, you put everybody that did not buy through the same follow-up sequence following the webinar. We usually, when even at our most advanced, it's about 6 or 7 emails over the course of 4 days that you're sending out. With the bulk of those coming on the last day, because you're creating some sort of urgency or reason for people to take action quickly. And all of the emails literally are focused on why they need to buy right now.
Mm-hmm.
And what we've seen work the best is an expiring bonus. So I'm not a huge fan of discounting or, get $500 off now. I think it kind of devalues what you're offering people. And no, we're talking about live right now. I'm always creating the funnel with the fact that I'm thinking about the future of automating it down the line.
Right.
So I don't want to have to change the entire strategy when I go automated. So a lot of people that, do discounts, some of the flack that they'll get, and we've seen it happen before, is people realize that it's evergreen and they realize that the discount, if they just re-registered, they can get the discount whenever. And I guess this can kind of come down to a lot of different factors, but what we've seen work the best that leverages urgency, creates scarcity without getting a lot of the negative people coming back at you is just an expiring bonus. And that bonus needs to be something that is just like brick to forehead, so complementary to your existing offer that you'd be dumb not to buy, right? A perfect example of this is not a client, is Amy Porterfield, and she does a program called Webinars That Convert. And she focuses on like her webinar presentation or her flow or whatever. She talks a little bit about the funnel, but her bonus is the sales booster bonus. And it's like how to sell on a webinar, which obviously the whole point of people doing webinars is to sell on a webinar. So of course you want this bonus. And all of the emails are about the bonus going away. She never says the doors are closing. She never says, discount. She says, hey, this amazing value add is going away. And we want to reward action takers because the people that take action are the ones that get the most results. So, like leveraging something like that really is the crux of like a lot of what makes the webinar successful. And, I mentioned about, I think like 6 or so emails over the course of 4 days. Again, all of the conversation, you're weaving in testimonials and things like that, but it's all about, get in now because the sales booster bonus is going away. And like, if you're going to be using webinars, you obviously want to be selling something. So like, you need this thing. So connecting that urgency to an expiring bonus that is like a no-brainer addition really helps, make people take action. So at the end of the day, very simplest, you could just do one email reminder and you could do one email follow-up. I don't think you'll be as successful. I think the minimum viable from a first-time webinar will probably be like 3 or 4 pre-webinar emails. Again, just time, why to show up, and then the follow-up in, hey, this thing is going away. Here's why you should be joining. Really is the minimum viable, and no segmentation at all. Like everybody, the only segmentation is if they bought. Don't send them these emails because that would be weird. So if they buy, they get removed. If they registered, they all get the same conversation.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So to recap kind of what you just talked about, I think you dropped a lot of great information there. Expiring bonuses on an offer, very, very effective. And you want to start live with the intent to automate down the road to help make everything just that much more seamless. And so, where we were going on this tangent was the simplest funnel to start with your webinar is you're going to advertise it or promote it however you want to do it. So maybe it's a Facebook ad or an email promotion, whatever it is. So you've got your landing page, you've got your landing page, which is your registration page for your event. Then you've got page 2, which is your confirmation page. And then you've just got a couple reminders that push people to your webinar. And then you've got your sales page, and that's it. That's really it.
Yeah, that could be version 1.
So let's now say, all right, Greg, I just signed up. I'm a client of yours, and I'm converting. My offer's converting. I've done this for a couple of weeks. I've done this for a couple of months. Boom. Time to automate it. What are you going to be looking to do now to, okay, so in your own words, go more ninja? What's the next steps to automate?
Yeah. So some of these things are just like super subtle technological like features really when it comes to the tool. But if you've been doing live webinars, you are most likely using a tool like GoToWebinar or Webinar Jam or Zoom Webinar. Like those are kind of like really now the top 3, I would say, for live. In order to do an evergreen, you actually need different technology because those tools don't allow you to process a recorded webinar the same way that these live tools do. So you obviously need to make the migration to the Evergreen tool. Webinar is kind of our go-to with some other clients using Stealth Seminar, but that's a lot pricier. So really it's let's take the email copy, let's take the follow-up and apply this to this Evergreen system. And one of the key things that really always comes up is, well, how frequently do you want this webinar to be available? Because as you know, if it's evergreen, you can do on demand. Mm-hmm. And, we've had some people take this to the extreme where it actually has a negative impact on their business. So I think when looking at all the different people that we've worked with, where we've taken a live to an evergreen, a lot of it needs to come down to like, what is realistic for you as an entrepreneur and that how your audience will respond.
What do you mean negative impact? You said they took it to the extreme and it had a negative impact.
Yeah. So we have this one client who started to see tremendous results from her evergreen. It was on demand. You could essentially it was working, and she started putting a lot more money into it and expanded how available it was. So you could be watching webinars. This was against our advice, first of all, that people could be watching webinars at 11 p.m. their time on weekends. It was every single day. And she ended up getting comments that people upset, that she was coming from a place of not having integrity, so far as that there were negative Yelp reviews of this person, which was kind of extreme. And when you would go to look for her organically, a lot of this negative stuff would show up first, which obviously doesn't set a good tone.
Right.
So it was working so well, and she was doing literally $250,000 in revenue from the Evergreen webinar funnel alone, but that wasn't enough
per month.
Yeah, per month. That wasn't enough, right? Mm-hmm. So you kind of need to ask yourself well, one, what's enough, right? And to what detriment are you willing to keep going? And at some point, you can only spend so much on Facebook, et cetera. But I think it goes kind of backwards. And where I was going with this was there are some people that I know that run evergreen webinars that still it's only available twice a week and at specific times. Mm-hmm. And they're still doing, anywhere up close to 6 figures a month on that webinar.
Yeah.
So I think it really comes down to the person, the type of personality you are, and kind of how well your audience knows you. And are you kind of joking that it's hey, obviously you can watch this whenever you want. There's little subtleties like that can make it be so successful, but then also be a complete failure. So I think it's how can you make sure that you approach this in a way where you maintain your integrity, you're not trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. And that's going to be different for a lot of people based on, their style of marketing. So just because you can do a lot of these things doesn't mean you should. If it's your only source of revenue, then I would probably be a little bit more loose on how frequently it's available. But if you still do launches and all these other things, you might not need it to be, a daily on-demand thing, right? Because it's just kind of the complementary revenue,
right,
that allows you to, save some time. So I think a lot of the subtleties come in the execution of making it operate the way that is believable. And still in the highest of integrity. So that comes to cadence really is the main thing. And what we see work the most is still have on demand, but only within a certain window of time.
Define what you mean by on demand, because I think people may be getting a little bit
Yep.
confused with what that is.
Yeah. So on demand, like with tools like EverWebinar, if you've ever gone to a webinar registration page or when you make your webinar go evergreen, if someone shows up, there will be a webinar starting within the next 15 or 30 minutes. Usually the tools have an option. So like, right now we're recording and it happens to be 11:24. If I show up to the page right now, there would be a webinar starting in 6 minutes. And there would be a countdown timer. So it's like, it's as close to on demand as you want. So there's really an availability to attend and watch on either every 15-minute or every 30-minute increment. Outside of that, we still recommend having two kind of like standard procedure times. So we kind of see 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. pretty common. And that's available 2 days from the day that someone is registering. Now, the reason behind that is that you still want people to show up, right? So if it's starting in 15 minutes, you only really need to send them the confirmation email. There's not many more emails you need to send. But sometimes, depending upon what you're selling, the price point, you need those warm-up emails, so to speak, to build some trust, to get people to understand why they're here in the first place, understand the result that they're going to have afterwards, right? So like there's going to be these different types of personalities that kind of need that encouragement, like, why am I really here again? Like, what am I going to walk away with? And those warm-up emails end up being a key reason as to why people buy. They're prime, they're ready, they're hot when they show up to the webinar versus like the people that are like, I want it right now, are typically people that like they already know about their problem. Like they've probably been researching the solutions. They probably already know you and they're like ready to take action, assuming it aligns with what the problem is, right? Or solves their problem. So you kind of have the best of both worlds when you go evergreen because someone can just boom, take action as soon as possible, but people can also get warmed up if needed. So, I think like having that power is really, really good. And now we're in a day and age where, I think the true power of evergreen is that like we actually see higher show up rates because of that on demand. Life happens, right? So like if it's 2 days from now, all of a sudden something happens, you don't show up. So it's a lot, you get much more people to show up and engage shockingly on an evergreen webinar. So like, I know I'm kind of like dancing around like a real answer, but it really does come down to these idiosyncrasies of who you're talking to, what the price point is, and like, do they need to be warmed up? But outside of that, it's like if we're warming them up, it's still 4 to 6 emails, that are all still saying pretty much the same thing. It's just really the different tool that we're using allows that to happen whenever someone records. The email doesn't go out at Tuesday at 11 a.m. It goes out at X time before the webinar starts, and that could be unique to everybody, right? So people are coming in at all different times. So
you touched on a couple really cool things there. First of all, what I've seen in terms of market awareness, it really depends on. So like, let's say you want to take your webinar and you want to automate it, right? There's a couple ways that you can go. You can still drive traffic directly to an automated webinar, or I know you can even take a step back and add a step before that automated webinar. And you mentioned if people needed to be warmed up. Warming up meaning like they need to know who you are a little bit more before you show them your conversion method, which is your webinar. So that might be a lead magnet before you invite them to the auto webinar or an email series, whatever that is. What I found is that's really market specific, and it's also tied to the level of your offer. So there's a lot of variables there. And so if you wouldn't mind, I want to wrap up this podcast with going down this rabbit hole of warming up. When you automate a webinar, when you go to automate a webinar, how do you determine if you can go straight to the automated webinar or if you want to put another step in front of it?
So it typically depends on who you're talking to, right? So,
meaning the client or like the end purchasers?
If I'm hosting the webinar, I'd want to target and invite certain people directly into my webinar, and others I'd want to probably veer into, a different sort of warm up funnel or sequence. So like, who would I want to invite directly? People that have been on my email list for a while. If a referral partner or a joint venture partner, someone who I know, like, and trust, is sending their audience to me and saying, hey, look, like, Greg's the guy for this thing. You got to check it out. Like, that totally, like, they will already know, like, and trust me because the person that they know, like, and trust told them to, right? So like, I don't need to warm them up as much. But what we've always found is, and we work with a lot of people that like have built personal brands. So like, they have a podcast or they have a YouTube channel, they have a big email list already or a lot of blog subscribers. Like, those are the people that, like, they see their videos every day or every week or get those emails. Like, those are the people that you can send right to the webinar. Previous customers, if this is a new product, all of those sorts of people, I can go direct to the webinar. But what we've always found is that when you want to go direct to new audiences that might not know who you are, so like, you start tapping into Facebook ads. Now, again, you can still use Facebook ads to drive direct into webinar. There's a few variables. Like, one, are you retargeting people that have been on your site? Are you going to audiences that already are aware of the pain that you're essentially solving? But really what it comes down to is this client journey, right? Not everybody is at the same stage of that awareness journey that, the hottest customers are at. So a really good example, I have this client that he has a podcast that he talks about helping pre-med students write their application letter. And like, there are a lot of people that are getting ready and want to go to med school that didn't even know that this letter was important, right? And like, there's all of these like tactics that he teaches on how to make like the best, letter. But like, I can't go and say, hey, everybody, here are the 3 things you need to talk about in your application letter to be accepted or to be likely to accepted. I can't say that to people that didn't even know that writing an application letter was important, right? Like,
Right.
That might just go over their head. So like, if I'm going to go out and I want to tap into new audiences, I might need to go out there and say, like, a blog post or maybe a podcast or something that's like, hey, did you know that, like, you should have an application letter when you're applying? Like, schools look at this and they value this. And so when, like, that whole conversation, it starts just so much more broad and so much more vague. And then so once they know, oh, I didn't actually think of that, let me learn more about that. And I'm the one teaching them that, okay, look, like, here's why it's important that you need this letter. But now that you know it's important, like, here are some things that you shouldn't talk about in this letter. Here are the things that you do need to talk about. Oh, by the way, did you know that it's really important that it's formatted a very specific way and that you talk in a certain style? I have this webinar where I'm going to teach you exactly how to format your application letter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people that don't even know application letters are important aren't going to care about how it's formatted, right? But like, once they realize the importance of the letter in the first place, you can have that conversation. So the ads, the conversation that you're having with these people needs to start more broad. And they're like, if you want to expand audiences, not everyone's going to already know that the formatting is so important. Like, you need to bring them into the whole world of this conversation, right? So like, they don't even know that the problem exists. So you need to like make the problem aware and then educate them on, hey, like, here's a solution. I'm going to actually go deeper on this. And that whole time, you're just getting them to know you a little bit better so that they're willing to even spend 60 to 90 minutes with you.
Yeah, that's so important too. It's just all about being able to crystallize your solution by taking a step back and envisioning your customer journey. And it's so, so important. I mean, you can frame a webinar as best as you can. You can have the best, closing techniques and the best content. But like, if you're getting these people on there who aren't necessarily at that stage yet to make that purchasing decision or take that next step with you, where that conversion happens, that sales conversion happens, it's kind of like wasted energy. And I see it happen so much.
Yeah. And one thing that I think is interesting here too is like, what we're talking about right now is stage 3, 4, 5.
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, you want to get your own webinar converting. Like, you want the people that know about this problem, the people that know you the best, to convert, right? Because you can go start having that conversation with all these other people, but if you're driving them into this conversation webinar that doesn't convert, like all of that effort is a waste, right? So like we talk about reverse implementation, like build things that are closest to the transaction as possible. And as you go outward, you might just need to warm people up so that they're willing to be on that, that conversion method. And like you and I both see this all the time. Like there's people that live and breathe and die by you only need one funnel. You only need one funnel. And I feel like you only need one funnel to take off, right? Like to get off the runway, start having that cash flow. But like all of those people are selling, or most, not all, most are selling something that's very high ticket. So they can afford to spend a lot of money on ads. They're qualifying people through applications, but they still, even at the end of the day, there's still a ton of people that aren't buying, that are on their list. And really probably what it came down to was they just weren't ready, right? So like if you want to be proactive about your scalability, these are conversations like, oh yeah, like I need a funnel or two funnels or lead magnets that are a little bit more broad, but I know that I'm creating a conversation that's going to slowly bring them into wanting to come onto this webinar that I already know is working.
Awesome.
So instead of having all of these dead leads behind me because all I cared about was the cash flow, now I can like nurture them, but also start approaching new people earlier on in the conversation, and which puts me in the position of being that credible source, the authority, and they're only going to know, like, and trust me more because I have the foresight to say, you know what, people that care about formatting, a letter to med school, there might be people out there in this world that are applying to med school and don't even know about this. So like, let me talk, like, how do I talk to those people? Right. And that's like slowly steps down the road. Once your webinar is converting, you start worrying about, the broader market.
Awesome. So Greg, that was so a lot of great stuff that you just shared. The last thing that I want to talk about, if we're talking automation, we need to get into really tools, because these people who may not be at this automation step yet, and who may just be, okay, I've got a course, or I need to get coaching clients, or they're just about to take that leap into launch their first product or service. They might not know what types of automation tools they really need to talk about. Now, you mentioned EverWebinar and Stealth Seminar. Now, that's for the actual webinar presentation automation. So like you upload your recording of your webinar, and it's going to play the video and host the video so people can have a room to show up to and watch the presentation. But let's talk about the other tools that we need to complete the automation: emails, text messages, and landing pages and web pages. So I'll have you kind of finalize on that.
Yeah. So the kind of key driver in all of this stuff is your marketing automation tool. Some might call it email marketing, whatever. Like there are actually 3 different categories now. There's email marketing, advanced email marketing, and marketing automation. I won't go into all that, but you want a marketing automation tool. And marketing automation tools allow you to apply tags based on if they registered or attended, which is what allows a lot of this automation to start and stop. And we really only recommend 2. We're super big fans of Infusionsoft. We're Infusionsoft certified partners, but it's also expensive and it's not for everybody. So if you're just getting started or you don't have a big budget, I totally 100%, if I were to even be starting over, I would be starting with ActiveCampaign. You can get started for $9 a month. So pretty much everybody can get started with this. It gives you all of the power of something like Infusionsoft, and it's actually a lot easier to use. Don't tell Infusionsoft I said that. But if you're just getting started, I would go ActiveCampaign. Super affordable, and will do everything that you need it to do. You talked about registration pages. So, when it comes to the webinar, tools like EverWebinar offer up their own registration and thank you pages. So like if you're really on a tight budget, I would say just use what they offer. But if you care a little bit more about how things look, you might want a landing page tool. And this tool will actually go above and beyond just what you need for webinars. So you'll probably want to invest in one of these anyway. We've really become diehard fans of ClickFunnels. I'm not a designer. I feel like I have a good visual eye, but I can quickly create beautiful looking pages that are mobile responsive, and they connect to Infusionsoft or ActiveCampaign very easily. So I would say ClickFunnels, that's also on the pricier side. So if you're a little bit more budget conscious, The other options are lead pages or Unbounce or Instapage. We have clients that use all three. They're all great. They're all easy to use. They're all like a monthly fee of anywhere from like $19 to $30, $40 a month.
Yep.
So you need one of those. And the last thing is obviously a way to accept money. So, in Infusionsoft, we can actually accept transactions in Infusionsoft, but if you're using something like ActiveCampaign, they don't have a payment processor. So you'll need something like Samcart connected to Stripe. Stripe is a kind of a payment gateway that connects to a lot of tools. So if you're using Samcart or Thrivecart, I'll leave it at those two. Those are two that you can be using to accept money, send people to an order form where they pay you to get access to the thing that you're selling. So you need your marketing automation tool, you need your webinar tool, you need your landing page tool, and you need a way to accept money.
Boom. That's it. You're in business.
You're in business, and you're making millions.
Yeah.
I don't promise that, but obviously the cost to get started these days is super low.
Yeah.
And you can be even more budget than that if you really want. But, if you go with those 4 categories of tools and you get any one of the ones I just mentioned, you will be you'll be using the same tools that most 6 and 7 figure businesses are using. Like they don't really change that much. So, you're using the same tools everybody else is using.
Awesome. So Greg, tell us where we can learn more about your company and find and follow you. So drop some links.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. System.ly, we are not a .com. System.ly is our website. You can request a consultation there if you need help. We have done for you services. And then we also have a free on-demand workshop that you can attend by going to system.ly/workshop.
Sweet, dude. So we had an awesome conversation today. I love talking to you because you are the automation king, and I'm very much interested in automation, as I think most people are. And you really simplified it all for us, and I just appreciate you spending about a half hour with us today, and just going through the whole process. So thanks again. And for anyone who's interested in automating their webinar funnel, go ahead and follow Greg on Facebook. He's always dropping knowledge bombs there. Join his group. What's the name of your Facebook group again?
We just changed the name, but it's called No Leads Left Behind.
Oh yeah, that's right. No Leads Left Behind. So join his Facebook group. You do a bunch of Facebook Lives in there. And dude, I just want to thank you again for spending time and sharing your information and your knowledge with us and with our audience. So that's going to do it for us today. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in. I hope that you were able to get some great knowledge from this and just get excited and focused on building, automating, and scaling your 6 and 7 figure webinar. So until next time, take care. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we look forward to giving you the next one. You can also follow and watch the behind-the-scenes look at how I'm personally launching a brand new 6 and 7 figure product from scratch at soldwithwebinars.com/TV. And if you'd like to come hang out with other fellow experts, join our Facebook group at soldwithwebinars.com/experts. Join us next time, and I'll see you there.